All right, it's 6 o'clock. Do you mind if we get started?
Not at all. Let's do it.
Okay, let's get going. Well, I can see all the attendees rolling in. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening to join us today as we take a deep dive into college planning with our partners at Student Choice. Being a college grad myself, I remember jumping through hoops, trying to figure it all out. So I'm especially grateful for opportunities like this to help our members and shed some light on how to plan, prepare, and pay for college. So in order to do that, we had to bring in the experts, and we have Suzanne and Samantha here with us. They have been with Student Choice for many years, and they come with a wealth of knowledge. So please do not be shy. Sending your questions, pick their brains. Now is the time to make the most out of this informative session. And if you like content like this, you can join us in the summer months where we will be going over student refinances. So keep an eye out for that invite. We also have a student refi special where you can get up to $250 cash back. So check out our website right now if you know anyone, or share that information. At Dutch Point, we take pride in the ability to educate, serve, and delight our members. And without further ado, I will turn this over to Suzanne.
Thank you so much, Octavia. I really appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with your members tonight and to address this big, huge topic that's in the media right now on college, how to plan, prepare, and pay for it. So today we're going to be talking about why college, right? And the cost of it. You know, should we be looking at 4-year colleges, 2-year colleges, trade schools, right? And there's different approaches to your choice. And the strategy that your credit union believes is a value-based approach. So we're going to talk a little bit about those 3 levels in a few minutes. I'm going to touch on the FAFSA form. As you know, or most of you are aware, the forms opened up October 1st, and most of you should have filled it out by now. But if you haven't, don't worry. You know, we'll talk a little bit more about why you had to fill it out in the first place. Going to talk a little bit about grants and scholarships, where to find them, how to approach scholarships so you get the best bang for your buck. Talk a little bit today about the cheap money, the federal direct loans that are given to your students. Never want to say no to these loans right now. They are the cheapest in town. They have a nice fixed rate, and the term's only 10 years, but we'll unpack that in a few minutes too. And then, you know, once you have all of those options in front of you, how do you utilize those options to the best of your abilities for your own financial needs? So we're going to talk about private student loans, where that fits into your plan, or if it fits into your plan. So let's jump right in. Why college, right? Well, we see that students that have a bachelor's degree earn more, right? They earn about 70% more in earnings over their lifetime, $1 million more over their career, and they start off better at the beginning of their adult life after college, so to speak, right? So hopefully they're starting with a higher income bracket than someone with just a high school diploma. So that's why we get into the things that we're getting into tonight. So where do we begin? How do we start comparing and contrasting? Because maybe as parents, you're starting to get your award letters in, and we're going to talk about award letters as well. But how do you compare apples to apples, right? There are a lot of tools out there online. We recommend this one. It's free to you for your utilization. You go to nces.ed.gov/college navigator. And what we like about this tool is that it compares a lot of different statistics on the colleges that you might be interested in. For example, is it a private school or is it a public school? So why would you be interested in that? Well, obviously, we know on the surface, private schools are more expensive. And don't forget, when we're talking tonight about all of these various aspects, you are building a 4 or a 5-year budget for your students. Okay, so this is where this tool comes in. So public versus private. Public, usually cheaper than the private, right? Especially if you're going in state. Out of state, not so much, but in state. But I'm going to tell you a little story about myself. I have two lovely daughters who have been through the college process, right? And now I also have a nephew that I'm helping through the college process. So it has given me really good insight as to what was and what is now, and how I would coach them in a different way. So, I might say, I never thought my kids would be able to go to a private school. Let's just throw that on the table. But one of the counselors suggested that they throw in a private school as well as a few public schools into the mix. And they did get offers back from both public and private. The private ended up being better than the public, believe it or not, because private schools, their pockets are deeper than the public school system, right? The public school system relies on funding from the Department of Education, the federal government, right? So if there's cutbacks there, you're going to see it in the tuition. Private schools, not so much. They depend on alumni and sports and other avenues for their income. So there is the difference. The only thing that I would caution you about private schools is how much do they increase that tuition year over year. That's where you're going to have to use this college navigator, because it gives you expenses year over year, what to expect. So that's a pretty cool tool to use in conjunction with, the types of expenses that we're going to be talking about as well later on. Other things, stats on graduation, how many people have graduated from the college, how many people have found jobs afterwards, right? That's important. And it could also be used for, you have a lot of choices financially, but psychologically, we don't even talk about the psychological effects on choosing schools, right? Where to go and how students learn. This tool helps you with that too. For example, it will tell you the teacher to student ratio. So if your student learns well in big classroom settings, this is going to tell you, okay, the ratio for a professor to the student is 200 to 1, right? So if your student learns better in a smaller setting, you're going to find this really interesting to use. Another thing, both of my daughters, one, I live in New Hampshire, and I was sending one to New York and the other one to Washington, D.C., not from those areas. I wanted to make sure that they were safe where they were going. This also gives you information about safety standards. So again, it's a really good, helpful tool to help with all of those things, but especially building that budget. So let's talk about the cost of education and how you start building that budget. Now, this has always been a scary slide for everyone, myself included, but it's the reality out there and what we have to deal with in this country. So for purposes of conversation, I'm going to be honing in on the second bar and the fourth bar. So the second bar is the public 4-year in-state on-campus experience. And the fourth bar is the private sector, right? So you can see the public comes in at $27,000 a year, and the private comes in at about $55,000, $56,000. That's nationally. But because we live in the Northeast, we have availability to wonderful schools, more so than any part of the country. There's a pros and cons to that. The con is they cost a lot much more, So you're actually looking at maybe 31, 32, up to 35,000 for public experience. And then the private sector, minimally 61, 62, up to 79, 80,000, depending on what that is. And for me, as a parent and as an aunt of my nephew, that blows my mind. Like, oh my gosh, how can you even, stack up against that? So the other purpose of me showing you this slide is to understand the expenses behind attending a college. There's tuition and fees, there's room and board, there's books and supplies, transportation, and other expenses. The dark blue sections of that bar are tuition and fees. It's non-negotiable. You cannot move the needle on that in any way, shape, or form. But anything beyond that dark blue area is called flexible costs. These are where we're going to make the decisions year over year that make a difference in the end game, right? We don't want student loan debt. We're trying to find ways to reduce that student loan debt because it's inevitable, right? But this is where you have a little bit of control. We're going to talk a little about that in a few minutes, but I just wanted to give you the lay of the land as to what you might be dealing with. Now, award letters, we're going to be talking about that. They are coming out mid-March to beginning of April, second week of April. So you're going to start seeing the offers come in. And we're going to talk about those. But before we do, I wanted to give you an overview of what your credit union endorses as a value-based approach to financial aid. So they always want you to take the free money first, the cheap money second, and then what are you going to do with that gap? You know, you have money left over, we have to finance it. You know, we're going to tap into our savings account. Are we going to, if we have a house, are we going to use our equity? And all of those options, if they're available to you, I would suggest having a conversation with your credit union or your financial planner or CPA to determine what is best for you. So let's back up a little bit and talk about the free money first. So grants and scholarships. Grants, it's free money, but it always comes with a stipulation. One thing that does come to mind is the teaching grant. The teaching grant is up to $4,000, and this is through the federal government. Wonderful, right? So, but you know, they have stipulations as long as you teach in a certain area, whatever have you. And if you want more information on grants and scholarships through the federal government, always go to studentaid.gov. That is a very powerful site. I'm going to refer to that a couple of times during this seminar, studentaid.gov. It not only will explain all the scholarships and grants to you, but it will explain student loans, and it will explain what is going on at the Supreme Court level with debt forgiveness and payment pauses on federal loans. You will get up-to-date information there. Don't listen to anything else. Go to studentaid.gov for your information on federal loans. So grants, let's get back to grants, the teaching grant. So let's say my incoming freshman has a teaching grant. Great, $4,000. Whew. But maybe in year two, she decides, I don't want to be a teacher anymore. I want to be an accountant. Well, the government can take that grant and turn it into a student loan. So as long as you understand the stipulations, you're going to be fine to make those choices for yourself and your family. If it's not clear on your award letter what the stipulations are for that grant, always call the financial aid office of the college that your child is going to. You get to know your financial aid people in the office. It is invaluable. I mean, it is unbelievable the amount. You could probably save a lot of money getting to know those people because they are looking out for you. You just have to take the time to get to know them. So those are grants. Scholarships under the federal government, you would receive by filling out the FAFSA form, which we're going to be talking about. That's free money. That's wonderful, right? Let's talk a little bit about tuition discounting and work study. So tuition discounting is, you know, that unmet need when you take the cost of attendance and you minus scholarship money, and you have this gap of, let's say it's $10,000. Well, tuition discounting is a payment plan that you work through with your school directly. You pay a fee for that. And it puts it on a payment plan of 10 months, 9 or 10 months, depending on the school. Every school is different. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, Suzanne, I can't put $10,000 on a 10-month payment plan. Are you crazy? And I would agree with you. But what you could do, you don't have to put the whole thing in. You can put $1,000 on a payment plan. That's $100 a month. Maybe your student pays $50 and you pay $50. That's $1,000 you don't have to roll in to a loan. You multiply that by 4 years. That's $4,000 or $5,000 not being rolled into a student loan. That is the end game. We want to minimize these student loans. Okay, so that's what tuition discounting is. Work study program, that is basically when you filled out your FAFSA form, they're going to ask you, are you interested in work study? Yes or no. If you checked off yes, and if you financially qualify, you will get that on your award letter too. So what that is a part-time job on campus for the students' expenses. Okay, so all of the federal grants and scholarships and work study programs, that's all first come, first serve. So I would always say, and you're going to have to fill out the FAFSA form every year that your student is in school. Fill that out as fast as you can. October 1st, that opens up, you fill it out that day, because again, all of this on the federal side is first come, first serve. So that's basically what it is in a nutshell on how we approach financial aid. So where does it begin? Like I said, the FAFSA form. So if you go to studentaid.gov, you can log in to the FAFSA form and complete it. So it's just demographic information, financial information on both you as a parent and the student. It takes maybe 30 to 45 minutes. You'll probably need all your financials in front of you to do it. And then what happens is when you submit it, you will then, within 3 days to at the most 3 weeks, I usually see it like a week after you hit submit, you will get what's called the expected family contribution, the EFC form or letter, whatever you want to call it. Now, when I first saw this number for my daughters, I almost had a stroke, because it was saying that this is the amount of money that's going to come out of my pocket. Like, I can't afford that. What are they talking about? What I didn't know then I do now, is that it's really not the expected family contribution. That's not what they're expecting you to pull out of your pocket to pay for the tuition. It's just a calculation where the federal government and the university uses. That's their starting point to decide what kind of award letters that they're going to give. It's not necessarily how much you have to pay the school. So just keep that in mind. A lot of times parents will say to me, I don't even know if I want to fill this out. I'm not going to get any aid from the federal government. It's going to be a waste of my time. And I would say, please reconsider, because yes, you might not get any federal aid, but what you might not understand is that all schools use that FAFSA form to develop their own financial aid package. So there's aid from the government, and then there's aid from the school. So you don't want to miss out on any money. Fill it out. You might not get any aid on the federal side, but you might get some aid on the school side. So please complete it for those opportunities. Now, once you've completed it, it opens up a couple of different doors to you. It makes you eligible, like I said, for the scholarships and grants, for federal work study program that we just talked about, federal direct loans directly to the student, institutional programs such as, some of these universities have their own student loan plan. And then there's that infamous PLUS loan, the parent loan for undergraduate students. We're going to talk about that too. So those are the doors that are open to you when you complete the FAFSA form. And let's talk a little bit about the award letter now. So in this country, there's no regulation that oversees colleges saying you have to write an award letter in this fashion. The most that the government did was they did publish a white paper on how to write it to make it easier for the consumer to understand. But the problem is about a third of these schools only follow that format. The other 2/3 do not. So that's why we have a lot of confusion in the months of March, April, and May as to, your finances with the school. So let's talk it through a little bit so that you can see, some pitfalls when you're taking a look at your award letter. Now, before I go into it, some of you might already have award letters and might be confused already. Just know that you have many resources to you. The first one is going to the financial aid officer of the school that your child is interested in, right? That who issued that award letter. The second is your credit union. Through your credit union, we offer, and it's free to you and free to anyone that will, click on the link. We have a college counselor. She is an expert at explaining award letters as to how to choose a college. She would compare and contrast different loans for you. She's there for you as a sounding board and as guidance. So just know that you are not alone in this, and that a lot of people have a lot of questions in this aspect of the college cycle. So this is a real, it's an example of a real boiled down award letter, but it's just for conversation purposes. So to go to this college, it costs $20,000, right? That sounds reasonable. Wonderful. This student got a total award package of $10,000. So I would take the 20,000 minus the 10,000. So I have a remaining need of $10,000 left. So that's where that gap is, right? So do I tap into my 529 plan or my home equity plan or anything else? What do I do? Do I get private student loans? Do I get a plus loan? That's what I am considering on that remaining need. So you think that that would be easy enough, but let's break it down a little bit. So let's take a look at the award. Federal loans that are subsidized and unsubsidized. We're going to talk about what that means in a minute, but they're loans that have to be paid back. Now, any federal loan that a student gets in their name, they're going to have to take a credit 101 course, so to speak, before they get it. However, a typical 18-year-old is very excited about their future. They're willing to sign on the dotted line. And what we take for granted, because we're experienced in credit building, they might not. So federal loans, some of them accrue interest. So you have to pay that back, right? It's a loan. Now, school grants, I talked to you about the stipulations, and if you don't meet those stipulations in year 2 or 3, it can be converted over to a student loan. So make sure that your student understands what the grant is. State scholarships, those are the free money, right? Something that was given by civic groups or religious affiliations or employer groups. The only thing that I would caution you against, and we'll talk about scholarships in a minute, is how does the school view the scholarships? So, again, we'll talk about it. Does it take away from the federal award letter? Are they going to give you less in federal awards because you have private scholarships, state scholarships? Who knows, right? So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then federal work study program. Now, have another story to share. My youngest daughter qualified for work study. I think it was for $2,500, if I recall the amount right. And in, I think, mid-September, at end of September, she called me and she's like, Mom, I can't, do this work study anymore. I want to dedicate my time in getting good grades, because she wanted to go on to grad school. And it was really important that her grades were perfect for her. And I said, fine. I said, so where are we going to get that 2,500 that we were banking on? And we had a family conversation, right? And she decided that she was going to work extra hours during the summer months to subsidize that $2,500. So again, as long as your student knows what work study means and that they can handle it, great. That's wonderful. The final thing that I wanted to pull out of this award letter is that cost of attendance, right? Remember, I told you there are no regulations for writing these award letters. So that cost of attendance could only be tuition and fees, right? On that other slide that I was showing you, the breakdown, the blue, the orange. So it's not including books, food, room and board. So you're getting all hyped up looking at that 20,000, thinking that that's all you have to pay. And it's not giving you a breakdown of what's included in that cost of attendance. So make sure you understand what the cost of attendance is when you're looking at the award letter. If they do not spell it out for you, give them a call. That's what they're there for. You don't want any surprises come June when you have to pay $20,000 when it's actually $30,000 or $35,000. That's the worst predicament that you could get yourself into. So just be aware of that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about with in regards to the award letter is that you can always appeal the award letter. It is not written in stone, folks. No, it is not. Because don't forget, when you're completing your FAFSA form, it's not on income that you earned today. It's on income that happened 2 years ago, right? A lot can happen in 2 years. What comes to mind is death, disability, divorce, escalating debt, bankruptcy, all of those situations. I mean, it could be COVID, right? We just went through the COVID pandemic, and your income could have been affected by that. It's not reflected in your tax returns. The financial aid officer doesn't know that because they're just looking at what is fed to them through that FAFSA form. So if you have those circumstances, I would share that with them. It could be as simple as, you taking care of your parent and one of the other siblings in your family goes to private high school. That puts a strain on your pocketbook, but it's not reflected in the FAFSA form. So again, have those conversations. And then one last thing I wanted to talk about with appeals is that you might want to address the financial aid officer again, probably the first week of June, second week of June, to see if they will give you more money off of your award letter. And the reason for this is that in this country, most schools require an answer and a deposit by May 1st. So let's say this university sent out 500 packages, award letter packages, 200 accepted, and 300 decline the offer because they're going to another school. Well, that school is sitting on a lot of, award money, right? That they're not using. So it's really good in the month of June when the student rosters are completed and they know who they're dealing with, go back and ask for more money. Now, I preface this with, please, couch this with, just don't give me more money because you're sitting on a pile of money. You might want to say something like, demonstrated interest in the school that your student showed in the past few years. Like my daughter really wants to go to this college because of X, and she's done this to show how much she really wants to attend your school. And I'm not a big fan of you pitting other schools against this school, but you can say it in a way where, we have other offers, that are great, but we really want to come to this school. So there are ways to ask that you could get more money. Now, this is a proven concept because I gave one of these seminars a few years back to another credit union. And then the following year, I came back to give it again. And I was noticing someone in the audience that looked really familiar to me. I'm like, oh, gosh, could have sworn I saw this guy before. After the seminar, he came up to me and he thanked me because he utilized that tip and he got $5,000 off of the tuition. I mean, not the tuition, off the cost of attendance. And I was like, oh gosh, that's great. So it might be you. Now, I'm not saying you're going to get $5,000 and they might even say no, but it doesn't hurt to just ask. So I just wanted to touch on that real quick. Now, how do you save money on those line item expenses that we saw in that bar graph? So let's talk a little bit about rent, which is room and board, right? And this is just for conversational purposes. My estimations might not be spot on to your university, but let's talk it through. So in this case, room and board is estimated at $4,000 a year. Now you could save some money by maybe instead of getting a private room, getting an additional roommate, or maybe getting in a suite. Year one, you're pretty much tied to what they say. They want, most universities want them to have that on-school experience, on-campus experience, I should say. So you really can't get around that. But in year 2, 3, and 4, your options open and you might live off campus or you might be an RA that would reduce the cost of that room and board. So those are the different ways that you could probably save on rent. The other line item expense is food. And this is where I get, a little bit ticked off. The food plan for incoming freshmen is ridiculous. It could feed 1.5 to 2 people easily. It costs a lot of money. It's the Cadillac of plans, and you don't have any options but to get it in that first year. But in year 2, 3, and 4, you'll get cafeteria plan A, B, C, and D. D being rice, ramen noodles, all of that. And then, your options open up. Now, in the first year, I'm thinking that if you do have a large credit, maybe some schools buy the credits back, so you can check with your financial aid officer about that. Or you get creative. Some women take their credit and sell it to someone that's maybe on the football team and needs more food, or whatever have you. So you can get creative with that. The next line item is a real heavy one, books. And I really should change this slide, because books now cost anywhere from $250 to $350 each, brand new, buying it through the university, right? So how do you get around that? Couple of different ways. You can buy used through the university, or you can maybe download some books on an iPad. Or you could rent a book per month, like I think it's $6 or $8 per month through Amazon. But any avenue that you take to save money with regards to books, make sure you clear it with your professor, especially, with technology majors, medical majors, anything like that. You want to make sure you have the latest and greatest. So make sure you get their blessing before you do something like that. Now, there's another tip that I like to give is hopefully students, and if they don't, it's not a big deal to establish this, but maybe they should establish a book expense. And the reason for that is skin in the game. So I had this tip verified by a professor at one of my seminars. What some professors do, a majority of the professors, I should say, is that they buy about 6 books a year, brand new books a year, and they keep them for themselves to have these conversations. If your student is courageous enough to go up to the professor and say, look, your books are really expensive. I'm really trying to save money. And I do have skin in the game on this. I have a book expense account that I have X dollars amount in. And I don't care what the dollar amount is. It could be $50, it could be $100. As long as the professor knows that, you've established something to have that skin in the game, that professor might lend that book back to your student for free. Now, it takes some, chutzpah to go to a professor and have that conversation when you're so young. But it might save you $300, $350. So I would do it, or at least try to coach your kids on how to have that conversation. We're going to get to personal items in a minute, but transportation, you really can't move the needle on saving costs with that. You have to get to class no matter what. The only thing that I can think of is maybe if you're on a big city campus, you bring your bike and you drive your bike all over the place. But other than that, it is what it is. Now, personal expenses, I really want to take some time for this, because I think this is where we get in trouble in this country with student loan debt. And it's called excess funding. Okay, I think it's a term I made up. Excess funding, how's that? So what it is when you take the cost of attendance and you get all of your loans from the federal government, private student loans, plus whatever you do, and you send that money to the school, okay? Sometimes you have a credit, especially for those students that live off campus and are using that money to pay the rent and the food. So yeah, great, that credit is supposed to go for that. But sometimes the university issues a debit card or attaches your debit card to this account. And the student takes that card and buys a cup of coffee with it, not thinking about where the source of that money is coming from. So guess what? They just financed that $5 cup of coffee for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, depending on the source of those funds. So, I hear sometimes where, students will buy extra clothing that they've always wanted with the credit, or pizza parties or whatever have you. And then at the end of their 4 years, when they're getting ready to graduate and they notice that they have to start paying back student loan money, they think to themselves, wow, why did I use that money for that? I could have put it back on my loan. And anyone can put that back on your loan. There is no prepayment penalties on any type of student loans, whether they're private or they're federal. So I think that's where we get in trouble. We don't explain that to our students, and they have regret after that. So just keep that in mind. So let's talk a little bit about how to get free money, the scholarships, right? The first source I would say is go to your guidance counselor at the high school. They have a lot of resources there, but they're really busy people. So there are different avenues. I'm going to show on the next slide where to find them. But usually a grant and scholarship, it's basically awarded through merit, or it's needs-based. It could have a one-time award, or it could be renewable over 4 years. So it doesn't have to be repaid, right? And the eligibility varies. I've seen scholarships given to people that write with their left hand, or have blue eyes, or have purple hair. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get scholarships. Now, I wanted to go back to how the universities treat these scholarships, not through the federal government. These are private scholarships through civic organizations or, religious affiliations or whatever have you. Like I said, I coached my daughters to search for scholarships the end of their junior year, at least an hour to an hour and a half a week. And I told them, this is your job. This is how much you're going to spend time getting, free money. My oldest one, she's a type A personality. She did everything that I asked her to do. She got a boatload of money. And her youngest sister, when her time came, was the opposite. She rolled with the flow. She really didn't, in my estimation, she didn't do what she needed to do. Every night I would come in and I would say, hey, what scholarships did you look through? And she's like, well, I couldn't qualify for a lot. Well, again, it goes back to psychology of it, right? She didn't think that she qualified for some of these. And it brings to mind a story that one of my coworkers told. I will always tell it until the day I die. She was on a committee, a scholarship committee, was giving out $40,000. This young man won this scholarship, and they had a big media event around issuing it. And at the end, the young man thanked the scholarship committee members and asked them, what got me the scholarship? Was it my grades? Was it, my involvement in school? What was it? Because he wanted to mirror that with other scholarships. And they looked at him and said, you were the only one that applied. Wow. So that blew my mind when I heard that. I thought back to my youngest daughter thinking, yeah, that's what she was struggling with. She didn't think she was good enough or had the qualifications for scholarship. So go for it. Go and fill out as many scholarships as you can. These are the resources on a national level. We have FastWeb, College Board, Raise Me, FinAid. Now, a caveat to this, these are national websites, so the competition is really high on these, right? I'm not going to lie. But there is a phone app called Scholly, and it costs money. I'm not employed by them. We just found this application and we thought it was kind of cool to use. What the student does is they complete about 10 questions, and it comes back with any scholarships that they qualify for based on their criteria, the deadlines for the scholarship, what the qualifications are. So you might want to check into that. And, it's super convenient. It's on your phone. You can just scroll through it every day if you want. Some tips for scholarships: please follow instructions. There used to be a scholarship for $10,000 and it had 30 pages of instructions. All I can say is, look, I know that seems like a lot of instructions to follow, but if my boss asked me to do a 30-page report, God help me, I hope she doesn't, but if she did, I would have to do it. That's my job, right? So this is how you approach this. If they asked you to paperclip the paperwork together, that's what you do. Follow the instructions. If they ask you to fill it out in red crayon, that's what you do. Because if you don't follow instructions, any little slip up like that can be put in the garbage pile, right? Because they have a lot to vet through. Include your job history, especially those that have part-time and cannot participate in extracurricular activities. It's important for the committee members to know this. And when you ask for reference letters or letters of recommendation, it's really helpful to the person writing the letter that they have like a student resume of yours from your freshman year, day one, through today, of all your accomplishments, so that they can just focus on what you bring to the table and not all of your credentials. They can pepper that into what they're writing. And then if any essays are required, please take the time, tee it off, the time, the energy, and the effort. Have a parent look at the essay, or a guidance counselor or an English teacher to take a look at it. And of course, you're going to highlight any charity work that you do for your scholarship search. The mistakes, applying for too few, right? And not being aware of the deadlines. Once you pass a deadline, you can't go back, right? And I expect everyone to start searching, again, at the end of their junior year in high school, all the way up until they graduate from college. There are scholarships that you can get in your college years. So don't give up that persistent path. Grants, we already talked about grants, but I just wanted to put up on the screen the sample of the 4 grants that the federal government offers. And again, if you go to studentaid.gov, you'll see more information on the qualifications for that. So let's talk a little bit about what your students are going to get in an offer letter, their award letter. It's called the Federal Direct Loan. This is made by the federal government directly to the student. It's not in the parent's name. So the student has to be a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen, have their high school diploma or GED, be enrolled in an eligible program seeking a degree or a certificate, and they have to be making satisfactory academic progress, called SAP. Every SAP is different for each school. And the reason why I highlight that is that if SAP decreases and your student is given federal loans at the beginning of the year, they can pull those loans back if they see that your grades are tanking. So just be aware of that, that fact. Now, there are 2 different types of direct loans. There's the subsidized and the unsubsidized. The subsidized is awarded to eligible students based on financial needs. So basically, it means that the government pays the interest while the student is in school, and it's at a fixed interest rate of 4.99%. So that interest rate is not going to move. And there is a loan fee of 1.057%. So that comes right out of your pocket. Now, the second type of federal direct loan is the unsubsidized. So this is awarded to all eligible students, and it's not needs-based. So that means that the interest gets calculated on day one of disbursement. Now, that payment can be deferred while the student is in school, so they don't have to make payments, or they can make payments. It depends on, how they want to approach their debt. And the interest rates are the same, 4.99 and the fee of 1.057. The term on this is 10 years. The loan limits that come through for freshmen, $5,500 for unsubsidized and $3,500 for subsidized. And as you can see, and as we talked about at that other slide, this only scratches the surface of what you need to pay the college of your choice. So how do you do that, right? This is the famous Federal Direct Plus parent loan. Okay, so this is different than the direct loan in that it is made only to the parent. You cannot put your child's name on it. It is your loan for 10 years. It is credit based, so they pull credit on you. And if you do not qualify, I would suggest that you go to the financial aid of the college that you're interested in, because then it opens up your student for additional aid on their end. Okay, so the allure of this is the borrowing limit is just the cost of attendance minus financial aid, right? The interest rate, though, is fixed. It's at 7.54. So, you got to take a look at that rate and maybe compare it to a home equity if you can, if you have that option. I'm not saying that's what you do, but if you have the options, talk to a financial planner. But look at that origination fee. It's typically over 4%. That's a lot of money. It's so much money that they allow you to finance it into the loan. So just be aware, this is a 10-year loan. You cannot transfer it to your student. You can't put your student's name on it. It is what it is. Interesting. Okay, so now we have we understand the federal loans. So what are private student loans? Well, the private student loans are not governed by the Department of Education, and they have underwriting criteria. So, credit unions, banks, fintech centers, they set the rates, the underwriting criteria, any fees associated with it. So when you're comparing different institutions, make sure you click on all the links and you understand the terminology, because rates vary by institution. You can have fixed rates and you can have variable rates. Some people would stay away from variable rates in this environment, but some people might not be scared of it, because typically variable rates are lower than fixed rates. But they change. So how often do they change? What is it tied to? Those are the questions that you need to ask these private loan institutions. Now, any institution that offers private loans should be totally transparent in their underwriting criteria. If they're not, move on to the next one, because they should be able to tell you all this information. I usually don't see any origination fees, but they can vary from 0 to 3%. There's a company that offers no origination fees, but a 2% supplemental fee. So again, make sure you click on all the links. Terms range anywhere from 5 to 25 years. And these usually require a co-borrower because they pull credit. They want to see what your income is. They want to see how long you were employed. And the good thing about private student loans is that they do have options to defer the payments while the student is in school, or you can make full payments, or you can make interest-only payments. So you have a lot of options there, and it's really competitive. Now, your credit union offers a private student loan. They don't have any origination or prepayment penalty fees. No student loan does, right? A 0.25% rate discount with automatic payments. So please take advantage of that. And then flexible repayment options. Like I said, they do offer deferred payment, interest-only payments, or full payments while the student is in school. They do offer what's called grace period. So 6 months after they graduate or separate from the school is when we're going to start expecting monthly payments. Until then, no payments are expected. There is the possibility of releasing co-borrowers on this. It's not a guaranteed thing. They would have to probably go through underwriting the criteria again. And usually the stipulations are that they want 4 years of consecutive on-time payments. If you're late in the 42nd month, the clock restarts again. And like I said before, you can make any payments, deferred, interest only, or principal and interest payments while the child is in school. Now, one of the great things that Dutch Point offers is that they have a line of credit that you can apply for without really knowing all of the variables. Like maybe you want to apply early to make sure that you have the credit in your back pocket and you're not sure where your student is going to go to school, or maybe you're not quite sure how much money that they would want. We don't need that up front to qualify you. We'll get the ball rolling, and then once you have those variables answered, we plug it in and we move forward with the application. So just a few things to note. Now, I know we've been talking a lot about a lot of different things here tonight. I just want you to know that you're not expected to be the expert and that you have a lot of resources. The first resource is to go to dutchpoint.studentchoice.org. This is where you'll see the information that we've been talking about. There's basically 3 tiles once you get to this site. It's paying for college, so everything that I talked about here today, right? There's refinance student loan section. And then there's the login to my account section. So anytime you apply for a student loan, you're going to open up an account where we talk to you. This is where you upload forms and we talk to you about the process. We're very transparent about where your application is in the process. So that's what that 3rd tile is for. And then finally, if you go out to this site, you're going to see the college access counselor for free. You can go and schedule an appointment with her, a phone appointment. She has her scheduler out there, or you can ask a question, a one-on-one question via email. So make sure you avail yourself of those resources. And now I'm going to pause to see if there's any questions. Sammy, do we have anything out?
Well, we do in the opening. There's one question which I think you may have touched on, but can I use my student loan to pay for a laptop?
Yes. Oh, well, that is such a great question. Yes. There are many things that you can use your student loan for, as long as the financial aid officer of your college approves it. And laptops are usually approved. So aren't transportation costs. If your school is out in California and you need a few tickets, airplane tickets to get home, they build that into the cost of the attendance, and you can use your student loan for that as well. So really good question. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. And a couple other ones that are kind of around the application process itself. So I'll help answer those ones. How long is my application good for? So once you apply for an application, you have 90 days to have it completely underwritten, which means it's finally fully approved and goes off to the school for certification to request those funds. If you are fully approved and maybe you're not quite sure how much you're going to need for the loan, or maybe you haven't decided what school you're going to go to yet, you have an 18-month window for that. So it's kind of a nice, convenient application that you can apply for, have the funds, know it's there. Because the next question is how long does a loan decision take? Well, that depends on how quickly, you supply the information. Part of the process is that you provide proof of income. So the loan is in the student's name with a cosigner, and that cosigner does not have to be a parent. It can be any qualified cosigner. So it can be a family member, a grandparent, a dear close friend, whoever that might be that you want to use as a qualified co-applicant. And then you already answered the grace period, which is great. And then once you have this loan, you've utilized it, you've graduated, and you're in repayment. The ask is if there is an app to use. Unfortunately, as of today, there are no apps available, but who knows? Maybe in the near future, there will be apps that do come available. And then the latest for applying. So peak season, when you're heading into school and needing the funds, we consider that kind of early June through early September. The closer you get to classes starting, which are typically end of August, September, the more busy all platforms are going to be. So whether you're still applying for an application or you're trying to deal with the financial aid office, they get busier and busier and more bogged down. So the answer to that would be to apply early. You're going to want to get into the process early so that you know that you're fully ready to go and you can pay for school before your student is off to going to school.
Hey, Sammy, I have a question.
Sure.
Applications, when are they usually open for applying? Is it the end of April?
Early April, as a matter of fact.
Early April.
Actually,
Okay.
it's coming April 1st is when the next semester opens up from Babel. We did just have another question come through. For the private student loan, do you apply for a loan in the amount needed in total for 4 years? Or can you apply year to year when you're aware of need each year? So that's a great question. Suzanne, do you want to take it?
Yeah, for sure. You know, we would qualify you based on the need of the school's need, the cost of tuition, right? So, you know, your credit union, I believe, has $75,000, up to 75,000. We would qualify you as a line of credit. So that means you don't have to use the funds up all at once. So let's say if you discover you need in the first year only $15,000, you just draw $15,000. You don't draw on the whole thing, and interest only accumulates on that 15,000. In the second year, you don't need anything. You don't have to draw anything. So it's a super convenient way, and you know, it's a very unique product to Dutch Point. The line of credits are very unique. You don't see that too often in the industry.
Yeah. One thing to clarify though, for the line, it's actually $40,000 for Dutch Point.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So you have
40,000.
access to 40,000 for those full.
Okay, my apologies. I thought it was
Yep. No problem.
40,000.
That's a fixed.
Okay.
And that's it for the questions right now.
Any other
Great.
questions? Throw them in there before we wrap up.
Well, I hope this was helpful for everyone. If you have any feedback, we welcome it. Please reach out to Octavia. Is there anything else that we didn't touch on? We'd be more than happy to follow up with that as well. But I wish you a lot of luck. It's a very exciting time. It's overwhelming, I get it, but it's a very exciting time as well. So
Yep.
Good luck to you.
One more question just popped in. Is it 40,000 per child? It would be 40,000 per child. There is a limit on a co-borrower, though. The co-borrower may not be able to apply for both children. So you may have to do one parent with one child for the 40,000 and then another parent with the other child. But it is 40,000 per child. Correct.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Samantha. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the time of all the attendees. And I wish you all a good evening. And thank you very much.
Take care,
Thank you,
everyone.
Octavia.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.